So my first question is whether state capitalism is a threat to the Canadian economy.
Well, I don't know if I'd use the term threat. I mean, I think that the various forms of business actors enter our economy, engage with us on investment and trade relations, and in that process, Canada needs to look after its own national interests.
Should we treat state-owned enterprises differently than we do typical corporate foreign investors?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the issue really is not so much the nature of the ownership, it's the behavior of the company. So that when we look at foreign companies investing in Canada, and whether it's from China or elsewhere, there are a number of issues that we take very seriously in Canada, corporate governance being one, corporate social responsibility being another, and essentially legal compliance is a kind of an umbrella term for all of that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter whether the company is state-owned or privately owned. What we look for is compliance with our legal regimes for environment, for labor, for social responsibility, for corporate governance, and so on. I would say, however, though, that when we start looking at state-owned enterprises, if we look at it in terms of their short-term behavior, they are market-driven like many other firms are. But nonetheless, we have to see them as part of a broad strategic effort by China to achieve energy security, to achieve security in supplies of other areas, other minerals, materials, and what have you. And they have to be seen in that context. So it's not simply an issue of do state-owned enterprises behave according to market forces? Well, yes, they do, but they're also part of a broader industrial policy. And that policy is not, frankly, interested in Canada's well-being. It's interested in China's well-being. And so if we're going to respond appropriately, we have to look after Canada's well-being.
In your opinion, is the Canada-China relationship about anything more than natural resources?
Well, again, I don't think we should expect other trading partners, other economies, and so on to be looking after our interests for us. I think we have to look after our interests ourselves. And so one of the really key questions for me has to do with building in strategic commitment to value add in our exports. If we look at the rich literature and the rich empirical record of global economics, it becomes very clear that economies that are completely dependent on exporting unprocessed raw materials and then importing processed goods are at a structural disadvantage. And it doesn't matter whether that's Canada or Brazil. The evidence of that is just overwhelming. And so the question for Canada is investing in the strategic long-term development of value add in our exports. The point came through to me quite poignantly a few weeks ago, where in the same newscast, there was discussion of oil exports to the U.S. This was before the Keystone pipeline decision was, deferred or made or what have you. And at the same time, we were importing jet fuel from the United States. And that is a classic periphery-centered dependency relationship. And so it does take a significant investment of capital. I mean, refineries, for example, if we're looking at oil, refineries are not cheap. And we need to think about the strategic elements of that. But in the long run, Canada's long-term sustainable prosperity depends on value add in our exports.
And how would you evaluate Prime Minister Harper's trip to China?
Well, the importance of the Prime Minister's trip is to essentially ratchet up the relationship with China to a new level, and primarily aimed at diversifying our trade relationship with China. So although the issue of the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipeline and oil supplies and so on took a lot of attention, I think an important part of that trip was that there were a lot of other agreements signed on uranium, for example, on beef exports and so on, that really do reflect an effort to diversify our trade relationship with China. And I think the general consensus is diversification is in Canada's interest.